When Xbox announced the Kinect, the expectations were sky high. The peripheral actually sold pretty well, was I will say, successful device. But what happened after that and what led to the death of the Kinect? Well, today we're going to go into a brief history of how the Kinect started and how the Kinect ended. Hi, welcome to Zgadgetreview. The Kinect is one of those products that a lot of people either loved or hated. So, what was the Kinect? How did it get started? Why did Microsoft decide to include it on the Xbox? Well, at the time, which was 2009 when this product was first announced and then later released in 2010, the Nintendo Wii was the console, kind of like the Switch now, that was the hottest selling console at the time. So the Wii came out with a motion sensing controller that allowed you to play video games without necessarily pressing buttons on the controller. The controller was very simple, you could just move it around and it will respond really well when you are playing games. This made it so anyone in the family could play a game. You could bring your grandma, give her the controller, teach her the movements, and she could play a game. That's what made the Wii so appealing. The fact that anyone could pick this up and enjoy a game. So then we have Sony with the PlayStation and Microsoft with the Xbox. Of course, these two companies have gone at gaming like they're used to going at gaming. Regular controllers, buttons, and thumbsticks. But they need to be able to compete with the Wii. They also want to get all those people who are buying Wii devices to buy their own devices. And so how do you do that? What did Sony do? Sony came out with the PlayStation Move, which is a controller that has a little ball, the sphere of light on the top, and it has a camera and it could follow. It was pretty much a motion tracking controller, kind of like the Wii had done, but for PlayStation. And it was supposed to work with games that look a lot better than the PlayStation, that weren't so family oriented. So the idea was that you could not only get people who wanted the easiness of playing a game, but also hardcore gamers. Xbox decided to go a different way. Xbox decided that instead of having something in your hands that is motion tracking, that they wanted to do something where you were the controller. And that's exactly what they called it. That Kinect was supposed to be able to see you and track your movements and then translate that to the game. This was supposed to, of course, differentiate Xbox Kinect from all other motion tracking devices and also make it something that looked futuristic and something unlike anything that you had seen before. Xbox came out with what they originally called Project Natal, and they showed it off at E3 in 2009. And the demos were pretty cool. If you saw one of these demos, you would have been like, wow, like, how are they doing it? Is this real? Like, they had this little girl on stage petting non-existing animals, but the camera could pick it up and you could see it in the game as she was petting like a tiger. Then you had Peter Molyneux with his demo of Milo, which turned out to be total BS and not real at all. But obviously we didn't know that at the time when they would show you this. And the idea of Milo was that he was this interactive character that you could talk to using the Kinect, and you could hand him things in the real world that will later be translated in games. So if you ask you for a piece of paper, you could bring up a piece of paper and Milo will grab that piece of paper in the game and do something with it. So obviously, I mean, we should have known that all the expectations, all the things that they were telling us about the Kinect, especially with this demo, were unreasonable, right? But at the time you're looking at this and they're telling you about this technology, you're going to be like, wow, really? Can we really do this? That's how they sold the Kinect, or originally known as Project Natal. And that was the reason why. They wanted to compete with the Wii and, of course, with PlayStation. So this was the solution that they came up with. At E3 2010, they revealed that Project Natal had actually changed names to Kinect, and that has to do with kinetic and connection. So they merged both words and came up with Kinect. And this device was released on November 4th, 2010 in North America, and at other dates within November in other parts of the world. It is estimated that 20% of the 55 million Xbox 360 owners actually purchased Kinect. The Kinect was sold as a separate peripheral that was supposed to work with your Xbox 360, and in order to obviously get you going with the Kinect came with a game called Kinect Adventures. Had a game that had to do where you were in a boat, and later they came out with Kinect Sports that had different sports. It was, I will say, an imitation to Wii Sports, which was a game that came when you bought a Wii, and a bunch of other games. I actually purchased the Kinect when it first came out, and it was actually fun, and it worked, which was the craziest thing, because with everything that you had seen up to that point, there were promises and demos, and not many people had been able to use it, and it was only the press and things like that. So when I actually got the device and I was able to use it, I was impressed that it really worked. That was my main thing. Like, wow, this actually works. Of course, there were some drawbacks with the original. One, you needed to have a pretty long distance between you, the TV, and the device. They used to sell a stand that you could put in the back of your TV, so you could have the Kinect standing on top of the TV, or you could put it below your TV. And that made it so you will have to have at least, I think it was 6 feet between you and the TV. So if you had a small space, a small apartment, you were pretty much SOL. It wasn't going to work for you. And that's some of the things that they didn't really tell you when they first sold it. And so if you had a coffee table and a couch, you pretty much literally had to clear out your living room in order to be able to use this thing and for it to work well. But once you were able to do that, the thing worked. It just took a lot of work to get it to work. And the games were mostly family friendly. There weren't a lot of like Call of Duty games or Battlefield games or shooter games that work with this. I know they had like a Star Wars game at one point where you move your hand and you had lightsaber. But again, the impressive thing was that it worked. And that was the main thing. Is this thing going to work? And when it did, I will say that most people were happy with it. So that was the Kinect for the Xbox 360. But that was just the beginning for the new Kinect, because the Kinect did so well that Xbox decided to include it in the upcoming console, this being the Xbox One. In May of 2013, the Xbox One was announced. More information was released during E3, and then it was announced that the Xbox One will come bundled with a new version of the Kinect, a better version of the Kinect, a version of the Kinect unlike any other Kinect before. I mean, keep in mind that the Kinect had only been around for about 3 years at the time of the announcement. At launch, the Kinect didn't have a lot of games at its disposal. It had Kinect Sports Rivals, which was a take on Kinect Sports, but like with steroids. The characters were bigger, better looking, the games were more responsive, taking advantage of all the features on the new Kinect. The Kinect was also focusing a lot on fitness, and it had an actual dedicated fitness channel that came with the Xbox. You could subscribe to it and do different workouts like P90X, Zumba, and a bunch of other things. And the Kinect did actually a really good job when it came to workouts. It will keep track of your form to make sure that you were doing the workouts the way you were supposed to do it, that you were targeting the muscles you were supposed to target based on the workout. It will also keep track of your calories that you burn and your heart rate while you were working out. So you didn't need a heart rate monitor on you. So it had a complete package. And I feel that if the launch wasn't botched from the beginning, that this could have been a product that could have actually developed into something great. So all the fanfare for the new Kinect was brewing up. Couple of big issues was that Xbox announced that you had to have the Kinect connected to your Xbox at all times in order to be able to use it. So you were not only forced to have it with the console, but you were being forced to also have it connected at all times. This also created that the Xbox will cost $100 more than the PlayStation 4 at the time, making people annoyed about the fact that not only was Xbox forcing people to use the Kinect, but also making the Xbox more expensive. Now, this created a backlash against Xbox because of the things that I just mentioned, but also because people were afraid of having a literal camera in their homes and technically a microphone that could listen to you at all times. Now, keep in mind that this was announced a year before the Echo from Amazon was announced. So there wasn't really anything in the market at the time that was like this. At the time, there wasn't cameras on your front door as you have today. Today, having a camera in your home, anywhere in your home, is a normal thing. But back then, it was not. So a lot of people were afraid of privacy, right? The other thing was people were afraid of targeted ads. Of course, if you have somebody listening to you and watching you all the time, they could offer ads based on what you were saying. Kind of like what happens nowadays with your cell phone. Microsoft decided to kind of backtrack a little bit, and in August of 2013, after the first announcement of the Xbox, they announced that you wouldn't have to have your Kinect plugged to the Xbox in order to use it. Its death was pretty much written from the get-go because people were angry, people were confused, and the sales of the Xbox One were just tanking. A mere 4 months later, in March of 2014, once Phil Spencer took over Xbox, it was announced that the Kinect was going to be removed from boxes, and you will be able to buy an Xbox One without a Kinect. This, of course, made it so game developers lost any confidence that they had on the Kinect and immediately stopped making games for it. Because if you're a game developer who's spending millions of dollars to develop a game for a platform that seems that it might not be working out the way they thought it was going to work out, you're going to stop development and say, hold on, I gotta save my money here and put these funds onto something else. Of course, the Kinect was starting to die. At E3 2015, there was no mention of the Kinect. It was as if the Kinect had never existed. Of course, Microsoft continued supporting the device, pushing firmware updates all the time. So you were able to continue using it if you had it for things like controlling your TV, kind of like the Fire TV Cube does today. You could raise the volume up, you could change channels, you could do searches, you could pause movies, rewind movies, fast forward movies. So it had all the capabilities that we see in products today. I just feel that it was a little early for its time. Then in 2016 was announced that the Xbox One S would not include a Kinect port, meaning that if you wanted to use a Kinect, you had to get a special attachment from Microsoft to plug the Kinect into, and then that attachment plugged into the USB port of the Xbox One S. This, of course, spelled the end for the Kinect, because in 2017, it was announced the production for the Kinect was done. And the adapter was also soon discontinued. In January 2018, Microsoft announced that the adapter that you needed in order to connect your Kinect to your Xbox was dead. Now, the Kinect 2, if we can call it that, was actually a pretty good device, and a device that in a lot of ways, in my opinion, was ahead of its time. We had a system or a peripheral that allowed you to wake up your Xbox on command. So if you walked into the room, you could say Xbox on, and the Xbox will turn on. If you were using the Xbox as an IR blaster and you had it paired with your TV, you could say Xbox on and it will turn on your TV and the Xbox all at once. Kind of like the Amazon Fire TV Cube does nowadays, but of course, way before that ever happened. It wasn't perfect though. You did have to repeat yourself sometimes to the Kinect for the Kinect to understand the command. You also had to have the right command in order to get the Xbox to do what you needed to do. And so those little things, made it difficult to use, and it wasn't always a smooth experience as it should have been. Another reason why the Kinect bundle with the Xbox One didn't do as well is because there really weren't games available for it. But the Kinect has continued to live on in other products that you can find today. Let me get back a little bit to the Xbox 360 Kinect, because the Xbox 360 Kinect has been used in movies and TV shows, especially horror ones, in order to make things look scary and suspenseful. For example, in the movie Paranormal Activity 4, in this scene where you see the little kid with all these green dots all over him, this is an Xbox 360 Kinect being used in this scene. If you use the night vision mode on a camera, you will get all these little dots that will show up on the area where the Kinect was pointing to. For example, in this video of Nick in Time Films, you can see that he is showing us what the Kinect looks like using the night vision mode in his camera. So you can see all those little dots everywhere. Everywhere where those little dots are is where the Kinect can see you. Obviously, it's something that you don't see when the lights are on. Funny enough, in the show Ghost Adventures, they use this all the time to find ghosts. And this thing, as you can see this skeletal person moving and the little dots. That person that you see moving is the way the Kinect will see you. And we know that it's a Kinect because of all the little dots that appear. As you can see, the Kinect found other uses to enhance storytelling in a way. But the Kinect continues to be used today. For example, Tempo, that workout machine that you can get in your home, uses a way of Kinect to make sure that you are doing the exercise correctly and that you're following the trainer on the screen. Something that Sky TV is doing is resurrecting a separate camera that looks exactly like the Kinect that you can use on your TV to do those exact same things. Sony is including a similar camera with their higher end TVs and also selling it as a separate device. Even though the Kinect failed when it first came out, I continue to contend that it was way too early at the time. And if Microsoft put out a device like that today, I think that it will actually work a lot better than it did 12 years ago. Let me know how you feel about the Kinect. Do you still use a Kinect? Do you have a Kinect? Let me know in the comment section. That is it for me. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so you can be alerted every time we have new videos. And thank you very much for watching.